not know. I don't know. But if I were to guess, the Blazers are probably ready to go with some sort of local TV option. That I do not believe, in terms of the infrastructure, is all that difficult. It would be difficult for me, but I'm sure for the Blazers broadcasting crew that does it, just going from a signal to route versus a signal to wherever in terms of local TV, that's probably figured out. The next part is you have to figure out a streaming option. You've got to create an app. You've got to do like a social network, right? All the coding, like, oh, he's wired in. And that, from what I understand, takes some time. And if I'm guessing, the Blazers aren't going to want to roll out a TV package unless they have everything dialed in terms of local option, streaming option, payment option. What are the numbers? Do we have the servers? Because servers crash. So I did learn that a little bit. That's if I'm guessing as to why this whole thing is taking maybe a little bit longer, I'm assuming it's probably on the streaming side. Yes, Brenden.
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. I think there's a couple thoughts there. I mean, one, Justin, as you know, the Blazers are one of, I think, 2 or 3 teams that, like, Trailblazers broadcasting is in-house.
Yes.
And that is something that's very rare. Like, most NBA teams have announcers that are affiliated with, Roots, like they belong to Root Sports, right? Or they belong to Bally Sports and not in-house production. So you're right. It should be a pretty simple on-off feed station somewhere. Like Justin said, everything else, as far as the reasons why it's maybe delayed, makes a lot of sense. And then the other aspect of it, Justin, is just legally. Maybe you're still finishing up what you have to do to officially say goodbye to Root, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you got through one hoop enough to where you can make the announcement, and now there are yet other hoops. They might not be as high of a hoop or high of a hurdle, I should say. I combine my hurdles and my hoops. Do you jump through hoops and you jump over hurdles? Sometimes you combine your hurdles and your hoops, Brenden.
Maybe we should do that as an Olympic sport. Hurdles and hoops.
Oh, my gosh. Could you imagine?
Having to hurdle and then jump through a hoop. That'd be great. Hey, they did breakdancing, so don't hate. Don't hate.
We were talking about yesterday those Guardian caps, and again, I saw last night a couple players from the Indianapolis Colts wearing the Guardian caps during the games. You're going to see it in NFL, and it's going to look weird at first. And so we kind of joked about what it must have been like the first time fans saw a guy wearing a face mask, and it's like, that looks weird. He's got some cage in front of his grill. Like, what is going on? That had to look so jarring.
People probably called it a grill. Like, what's his grill, man?
He's got a cage in front of him.
know.
That is so
Crazy.
weird. Or the single bar. Like, and then ultimately, face masks became a part of the game, and now you couldn't even imagine playing without the face mask. The first time they threw hurdles in a track meet had to be weird, right? Could you imagine? Like,
Without a doubt.
hey, these guys are fast. What else should we do? How about we have them jump over some stuff?
There were
like how many? I don't know. Like 9 of them. That first hurdle race, that had to be some entertaining track and field right there. Or like the steeplechase. Like, who came up with the steeplechase? It's like, we're gonna have them run a really long ways. Okay. Probably have some tired legs. What should we do? Make them jump over some hurdles. Like the shorter one? No, tall.
Do you think this
Tall hurdles. And okay, like 4 of them? Sure, but the last one, make them jump in a lake or a pond.
How?
It's like it's gotta, like, as much as we joke around about how we should have hurdles and hoops, they put a pond on the track for a steeplechase, and we still do it.
Yeah, so the modern hurdle that we know now, Justin, was not created until 1935. 1902, they were wood. Spalding made wood
Makes
hurdles.
sense.
I'm like, I bet.
Makes sense.
You think?
Probably didn't have an awful lot of just available aluminum alloy or whatever they make the hurdles out
I had
of.
a feeling Could have been some giant splinters getting into legs.
Oh, man.
From them wood hurdles, man. No thanks. And but yeah, that's crazy. You're right. The first hurdle must have been quite something.
Must have been so weird. All right. Things to dive into on the big show today. We're going to talk to Sean Highkin, maybe potentially get his thoughts on the Blazer broadcasts and how we are going to see this team. Also, it's been very quiet on the Blazer front. Are there going to be roster moves before the season starts? Because when we talked with Kurt Heelan, and he was saying it felt like most of the NBA, and it makes sense, was just like, hey, it's the Olympics right now. Obviously, men's basketball is a huge, huge thing for the league. Everybody just kind of chilled out during the Olympics. Now that that's over, camp is, what, a month away? Month away from Blazers training camp. And there's some log jams at some positions. And, I was thinking about this I was thinking about this yesterday. At what point, because we have seen kind of the trickle down of the transactions on the Damian Lillard trade. At what point do we start assessing value for what the Blazers got with Damian Lillard? Now, I realize there's a 2028 and a 2029 first-round pick from the Milwaukee Bucks. So, checks watch. It's going to be a while before we see who those players get. But, all right, got Drew Holiday. Flip Drew Holiday for Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams. Malcolm Brogdon has been traded. Robert Williams is still on the team, did not play, was injured, might also be traded. Did we trade Dame for Denny Advia? I know it's not like that's the simple way to do it, but I was thinking, like, at what point down the road do we start going like, all right, what did we get for Dame?
They won't truly know the full value.
Not till 2028,
when
right?
Those picks, those Milwaukee and Boston picks, when hopefully those teams are bad.
Because you would think trading a top 75 player off of your team would probably net you some sort of haul, but feels like it's
tricky to quantify.
It's Denny Advia and a couple of picks. But
Justin, he could shoot threes. So we'll see.
I'm excited about that.
We got to see what Denny can do first, right?
Where's he going to play?
Probably the 3, if I had to guess.
Coming off the bench? He's a starter for the Wizards who stunk.
We don't know what this team's going to do with its lineup, Justin. That might be.
I know we're so far down the line on the lineup, but
great question.
I was just thinking about it yesterday. This is what happens when I'm by myself and I have random thoughts pop into my head, because I understand the transactional nature, right? It was Drew Holiday and some picks, and I think a couple of other throw-in pieces, but nobody that you really knew. And then you flip Drew Holiday for Brogdon and for Robert Williams, and I think some more picks. And, well, then Brogdon has been traded for Denny Advia. And Advia? I've better learned to say his name. And Robert Williams, who didn't play, like, is it three transactions down? That's when we go like, okay, that's what we got?
Yeah, I mean, you also have to look at it as like, you're right, but like DeAndre Ayton was the biggest piece in the Dame trade. That's what moved the needle.
It was the 3-team deal.
Right, yeah, that's what moved it first, and Portland
But I feel like they could. This is what I think maybe it's because, didn't you feel like you could have made a deal for Nurk and Ayton and somehow made it work without the Dame 3-team deal? Because Phoenix didn't want Ayton. Nurk didn't want to be here.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
It could have been figured out. So I've always kind of discounted that as part of the Dame deal, but I don't know, maybe.
I mean, it just depends. Like, I truly believe now, Justin, like we know now, the Blazers made the conscious decision, we're moving forward.
And then they've drafted a center. Behind Ayton.
That too.
Hey, we got Ayton and we got Robert Williams. Who are we going to draft? Center. Got it. All right. All right, coming up next, the Mariners have fired Scott Servais.
Out the pool, Justin.
Yeah. Desperation move. Is there any chance to save the season? What is next? Looking ahead for the Seattle Mariners, and some interesting responses online from Mariner fans and Mariner media. We'll talk about that next. 620 Rip City Radio. right, so the big news yesterday, Scott Servais, exit stage left. Dan the Man Wilson, by the way, one of my favorite just kind of funny things about the Mariners. So Dan Wilson was the catcher back in the 90s. And obviously, anybody who's named Dan and you are at some level of success, you are known as Dan the Man.
So true.
Like every Dan who's had any sort of success is like, hey, Dan the Man. And so,
I mean, I got a friend. I'm like, what's up, Dan, man? I say it all the time when I see him, man.
it is.
He might be listening this morning. What up, Dan?
Is there an easier nickname than Dan the Man? I don't think there is. There was a time, and I know this because of my hair color and complexion, there was a time when every redhead was nicknamed Red. Like, just like in the movie Shawshank Redemption, the reason why Morgan Freeman's character's name is Red, they changed his name to Ellis Redding in the movie because Morgan Freeman was there. But in the novel, The Shawshank Redemption, he was a redhead. And that's why they had the joke in the movie. It's like, why they call you Red? Maybe it's because I'm Irish.
Two more that come to mind.
But like Red is such an easy one. Dan the Man. What else is there?
I got Marky Mark. And I got Richie Rich.
Richie Rich.
I have a friend.
Yeah.
I have a friend. It's like, what's up, Richie? Like, yeah. Like, that's the only. I'm sure there are so
Richie
many.
Rich is a good one.
Obviously, they made a whole movie out of it, like whole story and everything. But
well,
yes.
it was a comic strip.
Okay, I
Richie-
knew it had to start somewhere.
Richie Rich was a comic strip, and then it was a cartoon. So when I was a kid, Richie Rich was a cartoon. Then they made a movie with Macaulay Culkin, I believe. And then the dad from Gilmore Girls was there.
I was always more a Home Alone guy. I don't think I actually ever saw it, but yeah, no, I was always like, yeah, no, it's.
And then before Mark Wahlberg,
yeah, Marky
who
Mark.
was known as Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch,
Yes, sir.
which put out Good Vibrations,
Hey, man,
which is
great
still
song. It still
a
hits.
banger.
It still hits, man.
I don't know if anybody ever used Marky Mark
You don't think so?
as a.
Well,
Because there was a run there, right? It was like Flavor Flav was going on in the world of hip hop, and then Marky Mark came in, and there was a whole run.
Yeah, I've got a Mark in our family. We've called him Marky Mark a
I
couple
bet
times.
he loves that.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
But yeah, so Dan
yeah.
Wilson was nicknamed Dan the Man, and because it was the '90s and it was such a glorious time, the Mariners were. I don't know if they were the first, but they were. Maybe it's because they were the team that I remember, and I went to the games. But they were the first that I can remember that had walk-up music for batters. Famously, Ken Griffey Jr. was Hip Hop Hooray. They probably didn't start it, but it's the first I can remember of like now batting. Number 24, center fielder, Ken Griffey Jr. Hip Hop Hooray! Oh. And then Naughty by Nature, Hip Hop Hooray would come on, and the entire crowd would do the Hip Hop Hooray dance, and Griffey would hit a bomb, and everybody was happy in 1995. It was the best. But Dan Wilson was the catcher, and his nickname was Dan the Man, and he would come to the plate to Salt and Pepper it. What a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. He's a mighty, mighty good man. Which is funny because if you listen to that song and then you know Dan Wilson and Dan Wilson's personality, don't really jive. It's a good song, and Dan Wilson's a good dude. But it was an interesting juxtaposition. It's a long-winded way of saying congratulations, Dan Wilson. You are the new Mariners manager. So, a couple of thoughts. When I heard this news yesterday, I wasn't really shocked. It's the tough thing about being an organization like the Seattle Mariners, which is other than Lou Piniella, who was the manager there in the 90s and the early 2000s when the Mariners had their utmost success, right? When they set the record, the American League record for wins back in 2001. Like, other than the late 90s, early 2000s run when you had bona fide Hall of Famers from Ken Griffey Jr. to Randy Johnson to Edgar Martinez to Alex Rodriguez, all on the same team. Never made a World Series. You really have no other glory years. You have no other relevant. There is one golden era of Mariner baseball, which is essentially from Griffey getting drafted. I think he got drafted in 89, got to the bigs by 1991, became the biggest star in baseball by 92. And there was a run from like 92 to 01, Mariner baseball, glory years. Got him a stadium. Without that success, they're never that. Well, the Kingdom was going to come down regardless, whether they blew it up or gravity. Gravity was already tearing parts of it up. But they got a new stadium based upon Griffey and the success of Griffey and that team that was constantly in the postseason or in the mix. You had a bona fide superstar. Griffey gets traded away. No worries. We got Alex Rodriguez. Alex Rodriguez was the biggest star. Like, for 8 years, the Mariners had the biggest star in baseball. Now, there was always Bonds to Griffey, and there was always Jeter to A-Rod, but you could make the argument that for about 8 years, the Mariners had the biggest star in baseball. They got a stadium because of it. A-Rod goes away. They win a ton of games in 2001, and then for whatever reason, Mariners just can't get right after that. They had Ichiro and Felix Hernandez, who are legit both bona fide Hall of Famers. Bona fide Hall of Famers. Especially if you count Ichiro's time in Japan. Couldn't get over the hump. Could never get to the postseason. A 20-year playoff drought. And then finally, 2 years ago, under Scott Servais, after they had finally tinkered around and said, rip it down to the studs. Sorry, Felix, you've got to go. Sorry, Robinson Cano, you've got to go. Sorry, Nelson Cruz, you've got to go. And they rebuilt the roster, and it looked like from Julio Rodriguez to Ty France and all like this new reiteration of the Mariners that they had it figured out. And it was all because of Scott Servais and Jerry Dipoto. Brenden, if I would have told you back in fall of 2022, when I think it was Cal Raleigh who hit the home run to clinch the playoff spot in September. I think it was like a Friday night game. And the Mariners are going crazy. There's champagne in the locker for the first time in 20 years. If I'd have told you, yeah, guess what? By 2024, Servais is going to be fired. You would have been like, you're insane.
Yeah.
Other than Lou Piniella, there's not been a more successful manager of the Mariners than Scott Servais. That being said, you had to do something here as an organization. You had to do something, and this feels very cosmetic to me. Scott Servais, the same manager that got you to the postseason 2 years ago. I don't think he forgot baseball between then and now.
But this is...
It feels very cosmetic to me.
I'll say
and
this.
I guess, and sometimes in sports, you got to make cosmetic moves.
Well, I'll say this. He had lost the locker room. That, like, regardless of whether or not you believe that... It's kind of like an NBA coach, right? Whether or not you believe that their abilities are... It's not so much coaching, but it is truly managing personalities. And from what I had read and heard is, the Mariners were quite literally a mariner taking on water. And, and when that happens, captain goes down with the ship.
Yeah, exactly.
To continue the nautical terms of this morning. But I would really...
You just do a whole nautical theme.
I mean, that's Mariners, right? And before that, the Seattle Pilots. I mean, they got some water theories up there. But, I
think Seattle Pilots became the Milwaukee Brewers.
They did, yeah. Good.
Bud Selig stole a team from Seattle.
He did.
And created the Brewers.
Yeah, hey, man, that was some cool logos too. But neither here nor there. I think it was like Justin said. I think it's a lot of lip service, kind of not quietly going into the night. But that being said, it's an organization that I think it was Larry Miller, longtime listener, threw out sometime this week on Twitter.
Larry's going to love it. You gave him a shout out before he even tweeted at us.
Was just like, I think it was yesterday, was like, Blazers or Mariners, like more just like mid-level organization.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, no, it's the Mariners. The Blazers made the playoffs like 3 years ago.
Well, the Blazers have a banner hanging in.
Of course.
And again, I realize that was before cable TV, but the Blazers do have a banner
Before a lot of things.
hanging in the Moda Center.
But you get my point, like just that, like I'm looking right here, Justin, between 2002 and 2024, one playoff appearance.
One playoff appearance.
The Blazers had, over that stretch, had like 18.
Now,
well, maybe
counter argument.
But still, yeah.
Counter argument. It's a whole lot easier to make the playoffs in the NBA
100%.
than it is in Major League
Especially
Baseball.
with the play-in and all that. But especially when you add in the piece that the Mariners may or may not have been influenced spending this season based on what's going on with Root Sports and all that. Like, you add in that piece, and it's like, just...
Well, see, and that's the thing that it's tough to sell to fans,
right.
Is that what... You had it in the update. Where were they? They were 10 games up. That was such fool's gold. It was such fool's gold. But the problem is, because baseball, right, the 162 game, they call it recessing back to the mean, right? They're kind of where they're supposed to be right now at about
you think so?
They're a 500 team
with that pitching staff, though.
Yeah, with that
I
team
agree.
that's never been able to hit. They've had timely hitting, and the timely hitting hasn't shown up. That's the problem of baseball. Now, again, going back to maybe a fun conversation we had yesterday with Mike Parker, should Scott Servais have gotten more creative? Where you do see some teams now implementing more hit and run, bunting guys. There's some more old school baseball going on. You can do that with the pitch clock, by the way, and the bigger bases. Stolen bases are up. I think stolen bases are up. But with the pitch clock now, you can kind of play some more situational baseball, whereas Scott Servais is like, I got to trust in my guys and I got to trust the bats, and it never happened. It never came back around. The approach was bad, and maybe that's true, Brenden, that he lost the clubhouse. Maybe it's true that whatever, but I have a hard time buying that one with Major League Baseball players. You're a professional. You're a professional. You should not need a manager to motivate you. You are a professional baseball player. You're the one hitting 216 as a team. He can't pick the bat up for you, but like you said, water taken on, somebody's got to go.
Captain goes down, man.
And it's definitely we only have so many lifeboats, and who knows if they're even going to have some lifeboats. But
yeah,
services. I'm juxtaposed on this.
Sure,
and
sure.
Let me set these up. On paper, this seems like a right move. You were 10 games up. You're now 5 games back. You're 1-9 in your last 10 games. You're hitting 216 as a team. You're the worst team in baseball in terms of hitting. And you should be better. Somebody's got to pay the piper.
It's something I saw, like only the White Sox have scored fewer runs than they have.
And
like,
they are all-time bad.
Like, that's so
They
bad.
are all-time bad. So you've got that. I get it on paper. But then there's the other side, which is if you look at the history of this franchise, Scott Servais might be the second best manager in Mariners history. He might be. Outside of Lou Piniella, Scott Servais might be the second best manager in Mariners history, who just made the postseason, ended a 20-year drought 2 years ago. And you're going to send that guy packing because you put together a roster that can't hit? That's why I say it feels a little bit cosmetic to me. Now, can I get to the part that makes me chuckle? Because first off, Scott Servais is going to be fine. You know what I mean? He's going to be fine. He's made plenty of money. He's going to get another gig somewhere else. He's not getting kicked out of baseball. It's why Twitter makes me chuckle so much. Because of my time in Seattle, I have a lot of Mariner people, whether it is fans or media members or just people in and around the Seattle area, very passionate about the Mariners and the Mariners this season. and who have spent the last month and a half on Twitter roasting Scott Servais, just roasting him about what a terrible approach, what an unbelievably dysfunctional approach to hitting, just roasting Scott Servais. Scott Servais gets fired, puts out a statement. Those same people, always thought Scott Servais was 100% class. I wish him the best. Like, well, you've been roasting this guy for a month and a half. He puts out one statement, and it's like, well, always felt he was a good guy. Always liked him. Always felt like, no, you didn't. You just spent the last month and a half on Twitter talking about how dysfunctional this clubhouse is, how waste of a season this is, how Servais has to be feet to the fire, must be held accountable. He finally is. Always thought he was a class guy. Is that all it takes? Fire him. He puts out a statement, and it was. Question to you, because I've been fired a couple of times. Handled one better than the other.
I've only had it
I will say I've handled one firing better than the other.
I only had it one time.
That being said, if you were in a high profile job like Scott Servais and got fired, would you put out a statement to the fans?
Yeah,
I'd be like, kick rocks, double birds. I'll see you at the beach.
No, it'd be kind because they're giving me ridiculous amounts of money to walk away. It's kind of like Ed Ogeron, right? You don't bite the hand that feeds. It's like, hey, you guys want to give me the rest of my contract to not work? Okay, cool.
No, but I'll be to the fans.
Oh,
and he put out. It was a very nice statement, and it was a very.
The fans didn't. Well, actually, in a way, they kind of did. Yeah,
I'm just saying,
no, I wouldn't be. I don't think I would be. I think
I'm a little more Tom Petty than you. I'm a little more salty.
Well, which is kind of funny because it's usually the shoes on the other foot. But yeah, I think it's kind of like GM and Justin, where we said forever, like there are only 30 GM. Like there are only. Help me out here. Is there 30 baseball teams? I don't know this number off the top of my head.
I believe there's 30.
Okay, so like there are only.
I think it's 30 baseball, 30 basketball, 32 football.
Yes. Okay, and I'm like there are only 29 other manager jobs, and like
yeah.
I just be like, we made the playoffs. I will always be remembered for that.
That's true.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the money. I'm going to go hang out on Lake Washington, do some fishing.
Definitely. But, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
I think I would be like, kick rocks, double birds. I'm going to the beach.
Justin would be more Tom Petty.
That is my statement. But, yeah.
That's great.
I maybe would give it some time. Maybe he's got a very good publicist or just a good, like, hey. Put out a statement.
I think you would be like, maybe not. Like, would you be like Alex Rodriguez when he was a Yankee, storming out of mediation, going to the local radio station, going, I just got out of mediation. We just go, I just got fired, local station. Like, just literally go in like you could do that. Just like, absolutely just let.
Well, like I said, I got fired once, handled it, I would say graciously. Did the whole Twitter, hey, thanks for everybody. Got fired again. I was mad. Second time I got fired, which was complete and utter BS.
I feel
complete and utter BS. I went Twitter silent because I'm like, I do not have anything nice to say, and I am about ready to set fire to lot of things. And I kept quiet, which was smart, but it wasn't exactly the high road. But I really want to go with the low road.
Yeah, well, you know what they say, BS. Justin. You got nothing nice to say, and good for you. Good for you.
I got absolutely screwed on that deal. Anyways, you know how you can make up for that, maybe? Hey, winning some free tickets. That's right. If you want to go see the Hillsboro Hops this season, well, you can go to hillsborohops.com and get some tickets right now because still plenty of games on the schedule, or you can listen to Rip City Radio. That's us. Every Tuesday, because we are keeping the Ticket Tuesday winning streak alive. Exclusive tickets to the Hillsboro Hops all season long. Listen to the boys on Rip City Drive every Tuesday afternoon for your chance to win. On campus, next, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, 8 is the number. Marcus Mariota, Dylan Gabriel. Who's the best number 8 for Oregon State? Do you have that off?
Jam Griffin, starting running back.
Okay, this year.
Yep. That was a good coincidental number 8.
There we go. So we got 8 days until Oregon and Oregon State kick off their season here in the beautiful Willamette Valley. It's going to be a beautiful day for college football coming up in 8 days. But we continue our countdown to kickoff with some of the more interesting things around the world of college football. We've got a game scheduled in Dublin tomorrow, and Group of 6 coaches kind of fired up at Alabama. This is going to be fun. Let's go on campus. All right. Normally at this particular time of the year, we are pretty versed in the world of Oregon State, of Washington State, maybe even some former Pac-12 schools, some Big Ten schools, some Mountain West schools. Can't really say Miami of Ohio was on the radar, but their head coach, what's his name? Chuck Martin. Chuck Martin was on a
Great football name.
That is
Just Chuck.
Coach Chuck.
Solid.
But Chuck Martin was on. I'm assuming this is an in-house practice report.
I think it's like their Mike Parker, actually.
Oregon does them with Rob Mosley and Joey McNamara. Do the Bees do any?
Anything like this would be led by Mike Parker.
Got it. So they're doing a season preview, a practice report, if you will, and he let some steam off. Let's just hear. This is Miami of Ohio, MAC coach, talking with, I'm assuming, the voice of the, are they the Red Hawks? I think they're the Red Hawks. About their kicker situation there in beautiful, I believe it's Bowling Green, Ohio. All right, let's go. Or no, not Bowling Green, Ohio. Never mind. That's Bowling Green. I forget where they're at. Anyways, let's hear from Coach Martin.
All right, special teams, lost your kicker. Carter McLaughlin.
He's at. We didn't lose him. He's at Alabama. We know
Yeah,
exactly.
I understand
We know exactly
that.
where he's at. Like you media people, it's all pretend. Like no, Alabama stole our kicker.
Yes, they did.
They illegally recruited
didn't
our.
want to say it,
They
Coach.
illegally recruited our kicker and stole him from us. And like that's a fact. But that's college. But we act like it's not. We live in this la la world. Like hey, let's not talk. I don't know why
Here
everybody
we go.
knows what's going on. So yeah, Alabama stole our kicker. A couple
got a good one right now.
other schools tried to steal it, but then they okay. What's the
Let's
question?
talk about
I love it. I'm here for this pettiness.
It is the best. And you know what? I think you're going to hear more and more group of 5 coaches kind of start talking this way. Here's my question. Kirk Ferentz just got suspended a game. Now, I think it's a team suspension. It was one of those self-imposed, please don't punish us, NCAA. How is there illegal recruiting going on? Is he basically saying that Alabama was recruiting him during like a dead period?
Basically, I would assume so. Cade McNamara style.
But I've seen a couple of things on the internet in terms of what college football could do. Do you think, because the money at the top is so incredibly big, they do this in the NFL, or and I believe they do it in Major League Baseball. Brenden, if you're an organization and you lose a big-time player, you get compensatory picks. I believe in baseball it's called the sandwich pick because it's sandwiched between the rounds. If you lose a massive player to a big-time team for a paycheck that you can't afford, they throw you a couple of picks your way. We all know the reason why Oregon is playing Idaho in 8 days. It's so that Oregon can get a tune-up game and Idaho can get a paycheck. We know that. It's a transactional thing. Idaho is coming in. They know they're going to get their teeth kicked in by 50 or more. They are more than willing to do that so that they can get themselves a paycheck. Are we ever going to get to the point where maybe big-time schools just start buying or having to pay? And again, this isn't my idea. I've ripped it off the internet. Should Alabama have to pay compensation to like Miami of Ohio. Could you imagine if Miami Hurricanes had to pay the Beavs like, oh, what's an interesting number? $400,000. Nice round number. You know, where'd I come up with that number? I don't know. If they would have had for Damian Martinez, or if they would have had to pay a compensatory damage to Washington State for taking Cam Ward, you still allow players to transfer. But if you want a transfer from a group of 5,
see, I think
you got to pay. You got to write a check.
I love that, but I think it should apply to coaches. And it's like you have a coach that.
So Michigan State should also pay Oregon State.
Or Michigan State should have had to pay.
Well, they kind of are.
Well, they did pay the buyout.
Right?
They did pay the buyout.
So they pay a buyout.
The whole $2 million out of Magic Johnson.
Oh, this is interesting.
Fund.
Okay, I love it. Never stop being mad about it. Here's what's interesting, because I've talked about this with NIL deals. When is there going to be hard and fast contracts in NIL deals? You know what I mean? So that maybe you don't pay a running back $400,000, and that running back then gets driving under the influence and then just skips town. Like, are you going to see maybe players in their NIL deals having buyouts? When's that going to happen? I'll bet you.
It's
not with kickers.
It's probably coming.
Not with Mac kickers, but could you imagine if like the Cougs just had for Cam Ward? It's like, yeah, you can transfer, but there's going to be a buyout, and you're going to have to find you're not just going to sit here, collect a paycheck, and then leave us high and dry while we have given you all this NIL. You got to buy yourself out. I think that's on the way, isn't it? Again, not for a kicker. Do we have time to hear it one more time? I want to hear it one more time because I love it. For years and years and years, Alabama was untouchable, and now, hey, Chuck Martin is fired up.
All right, special teams lost your kicker, Carter McLaughlin.
He's at. We didn't lose him. He's at Alabama. We know
Yeah,
exactly.
I understand
We know exactly
that.
where he's at. Like you media people, it's all pretend. Like, no, Alabama stole our kicker.
Yes,
they
did.
illegally recruited
Why do you want to say it,
They
Coach?
illegally recruited our kicker and stole him from us. And like that's a fact. But that's but we act like it's not. We live in this la la world. Like, hey, let's not talk. I don't know why
Here we
everybody knows
go.
what's going on. So, yeah, Alabama stole our kicker. A couple other schools try to steal it, but then okay, what's the question?
Let's talk
What's the question? All right. Coming up, we have got hour number 2. We got Make or Miss. We got a Hot Take Friday and a whole bunch of other stuff next. 620 Rib City Radio.
7 a.m. on a Friday. Brenden Slaughter with you here for Rip City Mornings. The Seattle Mariners have fired manager Scott Servais after 8 losses in the last 9 games. The Mariners were 10 games up in the AL West in late June, but now are 5 games back of the Houston Astros. Former M's catcher and minor league coordinator Dan Wilson, Dan the Man, as Justin has told me, will take over in a non-interim manager role, looking to improve on the M's .216 batting average, which is last in the major leagues. And in Thursday night NFL preseason, a pair of games last night, the Colts took down the Bengals 27-14, and the Bears over the Chiefs 34-21. Coming up in hour 2, we're going to have Make or Miss. We got Hot Take Friday, and then hour 3, we're going to be catching up with Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report.
Hey, welcome back to Rip City Mornings, everybody. Hopefully you are having a fantastic Friday. It's a little gloomy out there today. It's going to be nice by the end of the weekend, but a little gloomy. We'll be all right, though. By next weekend, you're headed to Corvallis, head to Eugene, or just headed to your backyard. It's going to be very nice. As Brenden said, we've got Make or Miss. We've got a Hot Take Friday. Go with me on this real quick. All right, just go on a journey with me real quick, because I feel confident that I'm going to be able to land this airplane, but it's going to be an interesting route. So yesterday I watched the new Netflix documentary on Steve McNair, and obviously tragedy with what happened to Steve McNair, but a couple of other things beyond the tragic murder-suicide and the subsequent investigation that followed, which I do not want to dive into. There were a couple of things that stood out. First off, Steve McNair, who was married at the time, was, as some other famous rich athletes would do, apparently was also dating around. And Brenden, there was a guy in this documentary that I felt so bad for. I felt so terrible for, because here's why. This guy was dating his high school girlfriend, who at the time, I think they were both 20, is after high school. They dated for a couple of years. He thought, love of my life. She was a waitress at Dave & Buster's in Nashville. Turns out Dave & Buster's was a place where a lot of Tennessee Titans would frequent, one of which would be Steve Air McNair. And then Steve McNair started, let's say, dating this guy's girlfriend. Now, here's where I feel bad for him. Steve McNair was his favorite player. He was a huge Tennessee Titans fan. He loved Steve McNair. Now, all of a sudden, his favorite player just stole his girlfriend. His girlfriend would then murder Steve McNair. And now this guy is brought into Nashville PD because he is now a person of interest and potentially a suspect for the murder of Steve McNair. What an emotional roller coaster that dude must have went on. Could you imagine your girlfriend, your love of your life? I love the Titan. She got me a Steve McNair jersey for my birthday. You're dating Steve McNair. And now you have murdered Steve McNair. You have killed yourself. And now I'm in a police office in an interview because I am a suspect because they think maybe jealous ex-boyfriend did this. Whoa. What an emotional roller coaster. Now, this is where I'm going to attempt to land the plane. The other thing that I did not realize watching the documentary was going back to that Tennessee, then St. Louis Rams Super Bowl. And obviously the Houston Oilers were a franchise that was kind of going bankrupt. The Astrodome was falling apart. It would be obviously years before they would, I think it's Energy Field. Is that what it's called now in Houston where the Texans play? I think it's Energy.
I think it's Next Era Energy.
Okay. But it was Energy on its own, I think. But yeah. But it would be years before that thing was going to be built. And they would get the Houston Texans as an expansion team.
NRG Stadium. My bad.
Boom! Nailed it. All right. So the Houston Oilers move to Tennessee. And then they become the Tennessee Titans.
They were a lot better franchise when they were the Oilers, weren't they?
Well,
just success, right? Overall,
it depends because the Titans went to the Super Bowl, which is where
say this: the Oilers uniforms so cool.
The Oilers uniforms are cool, and okay, so who do those uniforms belong to?
Probably the Titans.
But the city of Houston, I would say.
No, I agree.
I would say they belong to the city of Houston. Could you imagine? Because every once in a while, the Tennessee Titans bust out the Houston Oilers uniform. Could you imagine if the Oklahoma City Thunder came out wearing old school Sonics uniforms?
Well, technically, they own them, right?
They could if they wanted to. Yeah,
yeah,
they very much could. Could you imagine if that happened? The vitriol and the anger and the venom that would come.
Seattle be coming for you,
just right out of the Space Needle and just right towards Oklahoma City. If they were just like, oh, we're gonna go throwbacks, Sonics. Anyways.
Seattle would be coming, like, Bezos would be on a plane, be like, we are buying those uniforms back.
But the other thing I found interesting in the documentary, because Nashville then in the 90s is not what Nashville is now. It's not Nash Vegas, which is what it is now. And obviously Nashville has exploded. It's a massive tourist area. Lower Broadway is just on fire in terms of bars and restaurants and tourism and everything. Back then, Nashville was a sleepy little country town.
So you're saying the Tennessee Oilers didn't quite hit the same way?
Well, the other thing you learn, like if you've ever been to Nashville, its sister city is Athens, and that's why there's a mini Parthenon in a park there in Nashville. That's why they're the Titans.
I did not know that.
Boom. Learn something new every day. Here's what else you're going to learn. The Super Bowl appearance for the Tennessee Titans was such a big deal. Remember they lost. Remember they lost by a yard. And they were attempting to tie the game. Kurt Warner hits Isaac Bruce. Rams go up. Titans march down the field. I believe it's Kevin Dyson. 1 yard away. Titans lose. But people of Nashville were so pumped for that season. They held a parade. They held a parade for the AFC champions. And they didn't hold the parade before the Super Bowl. No, they held the parade after the Tennessee Titans went to the Super Bowl, lost, came home, had a parade. Now, I'm not here to poo-poo that idea. I bring it up because college football is heading into a playoff system now, unlike anything we have ever seen before. And from the spirit of being so pumped to just make it to the Super Bowl, of being AFC champions, my question is, are there going to be teams that are going to call a Final Four appearance in the college football playoff a success? Because in college football, we have morphed from conference championship is the greatest thing you could ever have. That's all you ever want is to win a conference championship and play for a major bowl game. They used to vote for the national championship. It was mythical. It was mythical before 1998. And even after 1998, it was still mythical because USC has a split national title, so on and so forth. But the national title wasn't anything. They voted on it. Pac-10 champion meant more. Big Ten champion meant more. SEC champion meant more. And then they would, have a bunch of, out-of-shape sports writers vote for who wins the national championship. It was a mythical thing. It didn't really exist. Which is why Alabama counts 26 national titles or whatever they count. All of the non-Nick Saban ones are kind of made up. And then we went to the BCS, and then we went to the college football playoff, and we created this new system, which we went one extreme to the other. Greatest thing that could ever happen to a team in the Pac-10 or the Big Ten is to play in the Rose Bowl and to win the Rose Bowl. When I was a kid, that's all I ever wanted. Could Oregon just win the Rose Bowl? And they would eventually do that. winning the conference was such a huge deal. Oregon State 2000 celebrated forever. Why? Not because they won the national title. They finished that year number 2 overall.
That team could have used a playoff.
Massively.
I mean, they probably
I've made that argument that Oregon State 2000, USC 03, either one of those teams wins the national title if there's a playoff.
So,
I firmly believe that.
like, if you're playing, like, it's tough, right? Because that year, Purdue was good. Miami and the U was still around, right?
Mhm.
Because Purdue and Washington
Played in the Rose Bowl.
But that was not to determine because who was the national title that year?
The national title that year was Oklahoma versus Florida State, and that was the first Oklahoma title. Bob Stoops gets over the top. Chris Wenke at
Elite
Florida
teams?
State.
Or would you have, would you put Oregon State in the mix?
I have said watching Oregon State do what they did in 2000 to Notre Dame, if they would have gotten a chance to face Oklahoma, that would have been a hell of a game.
What ifs, man?
It would have been a hell of a game. But point being is, we swung to the other extreme, which was national championship or bust. 2019 for Oregon football should be a celebrated season, and it's not. Why? They won the conference.
This guy
they
who
won
plays
they won the Rose Bowl. But what? Because we got to this idea where if you don't win the national championship as a top-tier team, you're a failure. Which is insane, considering how many teams there are, one national title. So my question is, much like in the spirit of the Titans holding a parade for winning the AFC, will we see teams celebrate making a Final Four? Ultimately losing the last game of the season, because there shall be one team in a 12-team playoff that walks away the ultimate champion. But will we see teams celebrating making a Final Four, much like we do in basketball? Oregon made a Final Four in 2017. It was the greatest accomplishment Oregon basketball had had since the Tall Furs went to Chicago in 1939. There's a banner for the Final Four. Washington made a Final Four in football in 2016, put college football playoff participant on their stadium. Everybody mocked it. As an Oregon fan, I support the mocking. As a football fan, that's insane. You made the Final Four. You should put something up there. You made the playoff. Oregon's played for 2 national championships in the last 14 years. Lost them both. There's nothing at Autzen to commemorate that because we got to national championship or nothing. So, in the spirit of the Titans back in I think it was 2000, holding an AFC championship parade. What constitutes a successful season in 2024? Making the playoff? Winning a playoff game? Getting to the Final Four? Or are we still going to be in a national championship or bust mentality? These are the thoughts that pop into my head. Thank you all for going on this journey with me. We now go on a journey to make or miss, which is next on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, coming up in an hour from now, Sean Highkin's going to join the show. Excited to talk to Sean, get his thoughts on where potentially the Blazer broadcast rights could go, potential moves ahead. They plan on going into the regular season with this roster and then figuring it out from there. Shaden Sharp, is he ready to have a breakout year? Do the Blazers want anybody to have a breakout year with Cooper Flagg just kind of sitting out there? So a lot of stuff to talk to Sean about coming up in an hour from now. It is a Hot Take Friday. Speaking of hot takes, we're going to get to make or miss in a moment, but I understand that the job of media, as I am in, is to draw interest, attention, and eyeballs or ears, whichever medium you are in. I understand. That is the point of media. Unless you are in news, which you're supposed to inform. But the rest of us that are in entertainment, we're not here to inform. We're here to entertain. So I understand where maybe you get a little hot takey, but at some point you got to wonder what the heck is going on ESPN, because we have First Take on in the studio, and they're doing college football playoff predictions, and it's fun, right? Because now you can predict up to 12 teams. You can take a little, some liberties, right? It's not going to be the same Ohio State. Like every year, you can make 4 picks for the playoff. You pick Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Oklahoma for years, and then you swap Texas for Oklahoma just these last couple of years, and you're going to be pretty safe. Nobody picked TCU 2 years ago. I don't believe anybody picked Washington last year. But for the most part, for the 14 playoff, you can be pretty safe. So I understand, hey, let's take some liberties. Let's take some swings. But then you watch Chris Mad Dog Russo, who is a legend in sports radio. And I don't know if this industry is what it is without Chris Mad Dog Russo. I have to show ultimate respect because sports talk radio that I have had a 20-year career in exists because of Mad Dog. I get it. Mike and the Mad Dog was an institution. It set the tone for the industry. For that, tip of the cap. It's clear he knows jack about college football.
Almost, like, I was going to open up Make or Miss and say Mad Dog is mad, Justin. So let's open up Make or Miss.
Let's open up Make or Miss. It's better with the music. You're right.
All right, Justin, can I just start with my 2 biggest issues? One of them out of pettiness, one of them out of legit research that I feel very confident in.
Yes.
Pettiness, DJU's not taking a team to the college football playoff.
You don't think so?
I don't think he has.
He's got a lot of weapons.
I don't think he has the ability. Now
He's got a lot of weapons, though.
He does. He had pretty good weapons at Oregon State, too. He had a tight end who went to Michigan State, a receiver who was drafted in the 3rd round.
I hear you.
But no, like
I hear you.
I would be surprised if they ran the table like going and they were 12-0 last year.
All right, okay.
And then second,
yes,
I've done a lot of research into Boise, Justin, because they're on Oregon State's schedule. I think they're going to be good, but to pencil them in for the playoffs when they have to play Oregon, I don't think they will. Like I said,
this is how you spot a casual,
yes,
right?
100%.
How do you spot a casual? Here's what you do. You know that somebody from the group of 5 is going to be making the college football playoff. Now, I would imagine the more educated pick, probably App State. I think App State's in there.
I really don't like anybody from the Mountain West this year, to be perfectly honest. Maybe Boise, but...
Well, Boise's got Oregon on their schedule week 2. Now, again, lost to Oregon, come back, beat Oregon State, and I think they have Washington State on there, too. You come back, win those 2 games, there's a chance. But I don't have a problem with people picking Boise State to go to the playoff. I think they very much could go to the playoff. The idea that they are going to be anything other than a 12 seed if they do make the playoff is insane. And Chris Russo on ESPN just put Boise State as number 8 at the end of the season. And what that is some producer said, remember, you have to pick a group of 5 team. And he goes, hey, I remember Boise State. And when they beat Oklahoma, which was 20 years ago, 17 years ago. Anyways.
Close enough.
Still, I'll put it about 8. And it's like, not
Yeah.
going to be anything higher than 12.
I mean,
You're not. Nobody's going to be higher than 12.
Yeah, I mean, Justin, we love to do schedules on this show.
I love doing schedules.
I know.
Which one do we have?
Boise State.
Let's do it. I am excited.
So, like you said, you got to go to a bloodbath at Autzen. That's going to happen. Interestingly enough,
I hope it's a bloodbath.
you get Washington State and Oregon State on the blue.
Okay.
That's key.
Yep.
However, Wyoming was really good. You got to go last year. You got to go to Wyoming. UNLV was really good. And I say really good. Both the teams won 9 games a year ago. So that being said, Portland State, Hawaii, San Diego State, Nevada, San Jose State, fine. But yeah, if they only lose to Oregon, I could see.
No, I don't have a problem with people saying Boise could make the playoff. I have a problem with going, they're going to be number 8.
That was so crazy.
And
That's
it's
implying they're going to beat Oregon, I think.
Yeah, because
right?
they had Oregon sitting at 9. And, okay,
Okay.
let's do this real quick. Let's do this thought experiment. Let's say Boise loses to Oregon by 14. Could happen, right? I know Dan Lanning and this Big Ten Duck thing is a different world, but I've also said Oregon hadn't beat Boise ever. They're 0-3. They're 0-3. Oregon has not beaten Boise. They're 0-3. If uniforms are magic, they lost to them in Chip Kelly's first ever game. They lost to them the year before at Autzen Stadium in Bellatti's final season, and they lost to them in the Las Vegas Bowl. Oregon's 0-3 against
How
Boise.
have you only played them 3 times?
Because you're 0-3. You don't schedule them again after that.
Yeah, because I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Boise had their run. Oregon scheduled them twice, took 2 L's, got matched up with them in the Las Vegas. They're like, you are never coming back on our schedule, as opposed to the Beavs who keep scheduling them.
10 matchups with the Broncos. However, we are 6-4. So I'll take that. But yeah, there are a couple times they rimrocked us in the 2000s.
I will say what you will about Oregon, like
they were smart to avoid that.
they do some dumb scheduling, but they don't make dumb mistakes twice. And it was like, Boise's got our number. We're never playing them again. Hey, Hawaii, nope, buy out of that. But yeah, Oregon's 0-3 against Boise. So let's just say in this thought experiment that Oregon beats Boise by 14, right? Boise gets like an excuse me touchdown at the end, makes it look somewhat respectable. 14's still a good number. So let's say that happens. Boise runs the table the rest of the way. They go 11-1 with wins over the Cougs, wins over the Beavs, wins at Wyoming, win at UNLV, like you mentioned, 9-win team last year. Oregon loses 2 Big Ten teams. 10-2 Oregon versus 11-1 Boise. Who's ranked higher?
10-2 Oregon.
Do you think so?
I think so.
So.
Yeah, I do.
I think so too. But I'm just curious.
I thought this was interesting.
Because when you see like the ESPN or Mad Dog's pick, where it's just like, so for any scenario, for Oregon and Boise to both make the playoff, but for Boise to be above them would essentially mean Boise would have to win week 2, which again, they're 3-0.
I guess that's possible. It's interesting when you look at the like the playoff percentage expectations for teams. So, truth be told, Justin, Boise does have the highest group of 5 percentage to make the playoff, 16%. Again, we looked like Oregon State has 10, so they're saying.
Okay, can I ask you this? How much of that is from the spring when Malachi Nelson, who was a 5-star recruit and top, depending on which service you are, let's go with Rivals. Is that the right one?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
BeaversEdge.com. Let's go.
Rivals had him, what, 3rd quarterback or 2nd quarterback behind Arch? They didn't have him ahead of Arch Manning. He was 2nd or 3rd behind Arch Manning and Dante Moore. Right?
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
4th best quarterback. Let's see who they had in front of him that particular year.
It's Dante Moore and Arch Manning are 2 of them. And I got to imagine, I don't know who else would be in there. What's going on with our internet today?
Yeah, it's struggling. But regardless, like,
so
Justin's
how
point.
much of the Boise State love is people going like, okay, Boise's always been good. They just got a former number 4 overall quarterback from just 2 years ago. Clearly, Malachi Nelson's going to go to Boise. He's going to be a weapon. There's your trendy pick. Whoa.
That kid at Tennessee.
He got beat out by, what's that guy's name? Mox or something?
USC?
No.
Or
The guy at Boise.
Maddox Madsen.
Maddox.
I told my brother that yesterday.
There's a Miller Moss and there's a Maddox Madsen.
I said, I guarantee you, Justin, whoever his dad is, was such a proud dad moment at the hospital when he goes, yeah, my last name's Maddox or Madsen. Honey, Maddox. I mean, what a name, dude. Maddox Madsen.
He's 5'10". 5'10". From American Fork, Utah. He just beat out former number 4 overall quarterback in the country. And it's another recruiting rankings, obviously.
He was a 2-star quarterback.
Yeah.
Wow.
Meanwhile, Malachi Nelson, 6'3", $190 and 5 full stars.
Now I'll say this.
And that guy's he's not starting at Boise. So again, how much of the Boise love came from the fact that, okay, the Boise State Broncos just got Malachi Nelson. That's a 5-star recruit. That's a huge transfer. It's a huge get.
Yeah, it's really interesting to look at these teams because Boise's up there, Justin. Oddly enough, it just shows how, college football and this group of 5 thing is going to work. UTSA, the Roadrunners, have the next highest percentage of the group of 5 to reach the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
I know nothing about the Roadrunners.
All I know is that Will Stein used to be their offensive coordinator. That's all I know.
If we don't count them as a true Power 5 now, technically, Justin, Oregon State up next in that list.
But see, that's wrong because they don't get an automatic qualifier.
Right. So I just meant like teams who are not in the Power 4 conferences who, after Oregon State right there, you got UCF, Big 12, Liberty. Mm-hmm. You've got a Memphis appearance. There's App State.
As crazy as it sounds, like App State, Memphis, Tulane, those schools all have a better chance to make the playoff because if Oregon State's going to make the playoff, they got to go 11-1 with a very close loss to Oregon.
That includes a Boise road win.
Includes a Boise road win. It includes a win over the Cougs. It includes, but it's also got to be a close Civil War in week 3. It's the only way they're making the playoff.
You don't think even if they were rimrocked and went 11-1, I'd have a hard time believing that because that would be 9 weeks of winning after that?
Let me tell you because for them to get in, you know who you have to keep out? A Big Ten school or an SEC school. That's the problem that the Beavs have, is that if they had that automatic qualifier still there, Boise could still get in with a loss to Oregon and Oregon State if they're the highest ranked group of 5 because Oregon State's not in the group of 5. So if Oregon State went 11-1, you're going to have to kick out a 10-2 SEC team to put them in. Ain't happening.
See, that's okay. I'd be okay with going to the whatever bowl is, probably the Cotton Bowl or whatever one's not a part.
That'd be a great season.
I'd be fine with that.
Be a great season.
So I'd go somewhere warm in December. It's January, so I'd be.
Well, kind of goes back to what we were talking about last segment. Like what's a success? Like what's a successful season?
What bowls are not affiliated with the playoff this year? With how many there are, right? So
I don't know.
Let's see, playoff bowl.
I think just the New Year's Six are the playoffs.
So what's the best bowl that's not New Year's Six now? That's what I'm trying to think. Is that we talking like the Gator Bowl and the Citrus Bowl and I
think this.
Trying to think.
The Citrus Bowl would probably be it, which is I think now the Chick-fil-A Bowl.
Yes, because they have Verbo Fiesta Bowl, Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Capital One Bowl, Cotton Bowl. That all leads up to the National. So
Orange Bowl. Is Orange Bowl in there?
No.
Okay. Orange Bowl's a good one.
Right. So the Orange Bowl. Yeah, I would go to Miami, Justin. That'd be okay. But yes. Or no. I apologize. No. Sorry. Capital One Orange Bowl.
Got it.
Sorry, my bad.
The Capital One Bowl.
Yes.
Which I believe.
Capital One Orange Bowl. Sorry, my bad.
But I think there's also a Capital One. Is there a Capital One Bowl? Because there's a Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl and a Chick-fil-A Bowl.
So maybe because I remember
I could have that one wrong too.
Right, because I remember a couple years ago the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl was a playoff game. So maybe honestly, Justin, I think if we're going to be realistic, I know what Oregon State's quarterback situation is. They're not going 11-1. If they had a better quarterback situation, I could squint and believe it, but they're not. So with that, you still have to go back to what I think is the most important thing. Biggest thing, Justin, you just can't fall flat on your face.
Yeah.
This is an important year, as you know, for Oregon State, proving, hey, we can still remain relevant in football. And in my opinion, you need to win probably 8 games. You think that's fair? 8 games to remain relevant in this. Just because the worst thing that could happen is they fall, like they go 3-9, 4-8, and are irrelevant.
It depends on your losses. If you go in at the Beavs this season and you have a loss against Oregon, a loss against Cal on the road, and a loss against the Cougs, but you beat all the Mountain West schools, you're fine. You're fine. If you lose, because you'll have a win over Purdue in there, you'll have a win over Boise in there. You'll have a win at Air Force in there.
But, you know, they're flirting with the Big 12. The Big 12 is like, well, we don't know if you're going to be good at football. And then, you know, also flirting with whatever remnants could be when the ACC blows up. I mean, I never feel – I don't want to dismiss a football season, Justin, but this feels so much bigger. It's almost like an audition year.
Well,
it
the
really
good
does.
news for the Beavs is a couple of things. One, they still have 100 or so years of being in power conferences. Like, they've got that in terms of name recognition. The other thing that they have is a tie to Oregon and a tie to Washington State. Not saying that Oregon's going to bring them into the Big Ten. That's never going to happen. What I'm saying is, what if the Big 12 goes, we get an Oregon State game every year, or every other year, I should say. The same reason Washington and Washington State want to keep that going. And I think more important than being relevant as a football program, you got the Pac-12 money. You got the cash. That's huge.
Although
You got that cash.
it's like it's almost like that's going to be like your Justin, you remember going to bars and you had to pay a cover? I
Yeah.
feel like Oregon State and Washington State, like, because that's what we've heard. It's like the Big 12 says, okay, you want us,
Pay in.
everything.
Yeah.
All the network, all the money, it goes into the Big 12 pot.
100%.
So it's like, Justin, will the crew, like, is that the difference?
Do you want to be relevant or not?
Like the Cougars.
How bad do you want into the club?
But, like, is that it? Like, are they at the club? All the pretty girls with the guys attached. Oregon.
How much do you pay to get into
Impulse?
excess?
No, well,
And
I don't remember it being bad. It was not like any more than. That was like a $60 cover.
that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean.
To go buy $30 Red Bull
35,
vodkas.
yes, sir. With 40 with tip. You're right. That's fair. I was going to say, see, I had money, like more, like, let me rephrase. When I started going to excess, Justin, I was like, okay, I'm an adult. I have a job. Justin, nothing was harder than trying to come up with that $15 for the impulse.
That's insane.
college.
College bar being a $15 cover is
50
insane.
It was free when it started. Then it went to like throughout hours.
I think the most, like, because, like, the only bar I pay a cover at now is after Oregon games at the Cooler.
Oh, yeah.
On big
Cooler,
games,
man.
they'll have a cover. I think it's $5.
Yeah, so like
Anyways.
I remember at like 8:30, Justin, it'd be like $5. 9:30, it'd be $10. You showed up at like 10 o'clock or 11, $15.
It's
man.
that sliding scale.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, coming up next, we've got Hot Take Friday. But before we get to that, hey, there's some news about the Mariners lately. Maybe the Mariners get their act together under Dan the Man Wilson, and you might want to go see that because Rip City Radio wants to take you up to the ball game. Head over to the contest page at ripcityradio.com for your chance to score a pair of tickets to each game of the weekend homestand when the Seattle Mariners take on the Texas Rangers under new manager Dan Wilson. September 13th through the 15th at T-Mobile Park. Plus, 2 nights at Hotel 5. It's a Stay Pineapple Hotel with out-of-the-ordinary hotels in extraordinary locations. Enter today, ripcityradio.com. And remember, it is not too late to plan a trip to Seattle for a Mariners game this season at T-Mobile Park. Tickets, schedule, information, all at mariners.com. Hot Take Friday next, 620 Rip City Radio. Hey, let's wrap up hour number 2. While it is still August, you might not know it by looking outside, it's going to be unseasonably cool. It's not chilly out. It's not sweater weather by any means, but it is unseasonably cool outside. So let's say we warm it up a little bit with some emotional opinions about nonsensical things. That's right. It is time for Hot Take Friday. Here we go. All right. I realized that on Tuesday, when I did get off my lawn, I screamed at the holiday of Halloween because Halloween invading the month of August is absurd. Absurd. But I have also said multiple times on this show that I am, to a certain degree, a hypocrite. Contradictory opinions to things. So separating my thought on Halloween invading the month of August and the big news that came down yesterday in my world, which is, of course, my world is surrounded by exercise, country music, college football, and Starbucks news. Hot take, and I don't care if you're a bunch of haters out there, and it might be still a little bit too early. I love pumpkin spice, and I am so excited that pumpkin spice is back. In all forms. In all forms. Now, it is a fancy coffee Friday, and pumpkin spice is a little too much sugar for your boy on a Friday. But you best believe that on a road trip to Eugene for a football game in the month of September, there shall be pumpkin spice in the car. Hot take, Brenden, I love pumpkin spice. And all you pumpkin spice haters can kick rocks. That's right. Right down the road. Kick your rocks. Get out of my world. Pumpkin spice. Oh, pumpkin spice is terrible. It's like, then why do they keep bringing it back? If it's so terrible, why do they keep bringing it back? If nobody likes it, why does it show up every single year? Pineapple on pizza. If nobody liked it, why do they keep selling it?
You are Michael Scott with the white peppermint bark. Nobody likes that stuff but you.
Also, another hot take, which we might bring up come holiday time. I love white peppermint bark.
There you go.
Dude, have you ever had I think it's Williams-Sonoma? My mother-in-law buys it for me every year because I am the only guy who likes white peppermint bark. I
try it.
I love it so much.
Can't say I've had it.
Hot take. Bark, not from a tree, chocolate with nuts and pretzels. Highly underrated. Underrated. There was a thing they used to sell at Trader Joe's called Cowboy Bark.
Yeah.
Which was dark chocolate,
I remember
pretzel. That. I think there were some peanuts in there.
You into
and the salt? Yeah. They put salt on the. I used to eat so much.
Never had the cowboy. Had the cowboy candy from
what's cowboy candy?
It's like their salt. It's like cowboy candy is like salsa, but it's got corn in it, like whole. Like cowboy candy is more like.
Is it the sweet and the savory?
Yeah, more like a premium salsa that's got more things in it. So you've got like whole pieces of like corn in there.
You know how you are with ranch about how
salsa snob?
I feel like I make better salsa than anywhere I buy it, unless it's a Mexican restaurant. Haven't been able to crack that code. So they have some magical union where they don't talk to others. Nobody gets the recipe. Every Mexican food place with their salsa, it is so good, and I've yet to be able to crack that code. I have been on the internet for a long time looking for the perfect Mexican food restaurante style is what they call it. I can't match it. You know what? I actually like it better that way. That being said, any salsa that I can buy at a store, I can go all one section over, buy a couple of tomatoes, buy some peppers, and I can cook that bad boy myself.
Yeah, fun little quick story, Justin. We have a local Mexican place in Newburgh, shout out Ixtapa, that we've been going to for as long as I've been alive.
All right.
They used to have a location in Sherwood and Newburgh, and then now just moved back to Newburgh. But yet, we went for my brother's birthday earlier this week. Shout out Brenden, turned 16, making me feel older and older by the minute.
Justin, driver's license?
Soon, got the permit.
Because I heard like the kids now are like they're not getting licenses.
It took him
because they got like.
It took him some time.
There's Uber and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of eased into getting his permit. Wasn't like day 115, so he's got some more.
I was a day.
Me too.
Day one.
So he's in it, but naturally
took me 3 tries to get my permit.
Naturally, like, what kind of car am I going to get? I'm like, oh yeah, the cheapest.
How many times did it take you to get your driver's license?
Driver's license 1, permit 3 times.
Me too. 3 times for the permit.
Yeah, it's hard. It is hard. But all that to say, Justin, we have said forever, we can't make enchilada sauce. Can't find enchilada sauce like they have. First time.
You just can't do it.
We've always bought salsa from them, but my mom goes, we should ask them if we can buy their enchilada sauce. We bought their enchilada sauce, Justin brought it home. So, yeah. Anyway, my hot take real quick because we got to get into it. Justin, hot take. The Delaware State football team got done dirty. Did you hear about this story?
So apparently they were
crazy.
They were on a flight to Hawaii from Delaware, and it was a direct flight.
A chartered direct flight.
Direct flight.
Big old
from
Boeing.
Delaware to Hawaii, and they missed the flight because of a bus breakdown.
The bus company forgot to pick them up.
Okay, here's the question I had. Now, I don't know if you've done more research on this, because my first thought was, because they're like, oh, they might not make their flight. And it's like, it's a chartered flight. How do they not make their flight?
So
it's chartered.
So it was going out of JFK.
Oh, okay, so there's a schedule.
Yes, and I think I got it. I'm no expert, but I'm guessing JFK, Justin, you missed your takeoff window. They're probably
it's a tight window.
We'll give it to you in 3 hours.
I didn't realize they were going out of JFK. This is why I should read more than just the
no,
headline.
You're good. I don't expect. But one of the 4 games this weekend, Justin. So quick behind the scene. 5,000 miles, right? So we think from here, like 3,000 miles or less is a lot, but 5,000 mials. 10-hour flight.
I was going to say, it's got to be a 10-hour flight.
10-hour flight.
Direct. I just flew from Seattle to Hawaii.
Yeah, we thought that was...
Bro, it was
right. I just went Portland to Hawaii. But, Justin, they had to take 4 different commercial flights for the team to get there. Broke up the team into 4s. Some players got there Tuesday. Some players got there Wednesday. Some players got there yesterday. And ho-hum, I think this is Delaware State's 2nd season in FBS. They are 41-point underdogs to Hawaii. So talk about, enjoy Honolulu, guys, because it's probably going to be a rough trip, and it's probably going to be a rough result for you.
41-point underdogs.
That is
and
almost...
that's on 9 o'clock our time. I'm definitely watching that game.
Justin's I'm all in.
We can't bet on it.
Is it even on
TV
Kings. Though, Justin?
Yeah, it's on. Well, it might not be on TV. Now that I'm looking at the schedule, I don't see it on TV.
Oops. Facebook Live, maybe.
There's got to be somewhere to watch this game. But I think I would take the over.
But yeah, hot take. I have no idea how that happens, man. No idea.
It is amazing that you could actually coordinate that whole thing of there's 130 people with coaches, players, and staff, and getting them on from JFK to Hawaii with last minute.
And Justin, imagine if you're just chilling with your wife, you're sitting on a plane, you're like, oh, there's half the Delaware State football team joining us on the way to Hawaii.
Are they the Blue Jackets? Hornets. They're the Hornets.
Yep. That's pay-per-view for that game, so we will not be watching.
Yeah, I ain't watching that game. How's that? First is week 0, 9 o'clock game. We can't get that on TV somewhere.
Pay-per-view.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Hour number 3. We're free. You don't have to pay for hour number 3. We're free next on 620 Rip City Radio.
8 a.m. on a Friday. Brenden Slaughter with you for Rip City Mornings. The Seattle Mariners have fired manager Scott Servais after 8 losses in the last 9 games. The M's were up 10 games in the AL West in late June, but now find themselves 5 games behind the Houston Astros. Former Mariners catcher and minor league coordinator Dan Wilson will take over for the M's in a non-interim role, looking to improve on the M's .216 batting average, which is last in the major leagues. And in Thursday night NFL preseason, the Colts took down the Bengals 27-14 and the Bears over the Chiefs 34-21. Coming up in 20 minutes, we're going to catch up with Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report. You've got Rip City Mornings, Hour 3.
Hey, welcome back to Rip City Mornings, everybody. It is hour number 3. We got an RCM mailbag. Excited to talk to Sean Highkin coming up in 20 minutes. We have continued our countdown to kickoff. Very excited about Florida State, Georgia Tech tomorrow. Even if it's a bad game, don't care. It's a game that actually counts. Florida State's going to be an interesting team this year because former Oregon State quarterback DJ Uiagalelei takes the reins there.
He does.
It's one of those things where DJU, it's never quite made sense. It's never quite,
No.
he wins more than anybody you could call a bust. Do you know what I mean? You can't say his career has been a bust because he wins too much. Oregon State was number 10 in the country last year under DJU. Clemson, what did he lose, 4 games? Something crazy as a starter?
6.
6 games in 2 years?
I think here's the reason for
But
that.
that's what I'm saying. It's confusing. He's not doing what what Bryce Young did or what Caleb Williams did, right? Because that was kind of his class, right? He's not doing what Caleb Williams did.
I'd even throw in Bo.
And Bo Nix did, but he wins too much to be a bust.
Yeah,
he's not a bust, but it's funny because we get into boomer bust.
Yeah.
Right? It's you're either a Heisman Trophy candidate or you stink. And it's he's kind of good.
The knock on DJ when he came into Oregon State was completion percentage was not great. Throwing for a lot of yards was not great. And, he didn't want to run as much as he did at Clemson. So you look back, never better than 62% as Clemson's quarterback. Comes in Oregon State. It was a big problem. 57% of throws.
Yeah, that's tough.
It was a big problem this last year. And he threw 21 touchdowns against 7 picks. And only for 2,600 yards.
Mm-hmm.
That's average numbers. He
took Oregon State to the number 10 spot in the country.
Briefly. They then lost out in his final 2 games to go 8-4 and lost them. He beat who he was supposed to beat, and that was the knock on DJ. He could never beat elite competition.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Do you think
last year, let's say forget the rankings.
Sure.
8-4 last year. What are the Beavs with Ben Goldbranson at quarterback last year? Are they 8-4?
Can we talk Beavs with Aiden Childs? I think would have been a more interesting.
That's a good point. Yeah.
More interesting.
What if they played Aiden Childs the entire time?
It'd been about similar,
year?
but I think you'd be talking oh my gosh, look what this kid did as a freshman. I've always thought with DJ, there's it's kind of like I don't know, and maybe this is unfair, but it's he is kind of to me that guy who has all the talent, all the ability, but for whatever reason just doesn't quite have that mental edge to be
because I think it's really hard to be an elite level quarterback.
It is.
I mean,
it is.
He's good. You
he's
can't
good.
deny that
he's good, but good is the enemy of great in this particular instance.
Is that? That's.
I've heard that before.
I've heard that, but I think it's one of those where it's I don't know if. I think most people use that as they don't like good because you need it to be perfect.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so but anyways.
But no, for sure. I think
6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other,
No, totally. And I think it's
gift horse in the mouth.
When you surround him with what will be that's the thing. He was pretty tough to find a better offensive line in college football than he had last year.
That is very true. Hey, can I ask you this real quick? You mentioned good being the enemy of great, and I just threw out gift. This was a discussion at the gym. No big deal. I
love it. Yeah, let's do it.
The term, and it's 8:05, so I'm not going to be vulgar, but let's just say backside. The other term for backside over tea kettle.
Okay.
Have you ever heard that phrase?
Oh, so many times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we were
But
talking
usually
about
the more vulgar version.
We're
Yeah.
doing a dynamic lift. Again, no big deal, lift weights. And it was like, be careful to keep your balance, because if not, you're going to go blank over tea kettle. And there were a couple of people at the gym going like, what? What was that? And I'm like, I think, and I didn't say it, but I'm like, yeah, that's a common phrase. So I was just wondering if it was a generational thing.
I can remember.
But you've heard, obviously, somebody say, butt over tea kettle.
So there's a great story, Justin, and I might be paraphrasing it a bit, but essentially when I was probably, when you're like 6 or 7 years old and you have that confidence, like your parents tell you not to do something and you're just like, well, I might try it anyway.
Yes.
And parents definitely know better. Justin, this was, I don't know, probably like November, and me and my grandpa and my dad are fishing the Nicanicum River, which is
sounds so cold.
Near Seaside.
That sounds so cold.
And we're getting out of the boat.
November fishing in Seaside sounds so cold.
I can remember many layers, many layers. And I remember like very little, but like getting out of the boat, and my grandpa says, stand right here. Don't move. Justin, long story short, Brenden did not stand right there.
No.
Brenden fell in.
He fell in the water.
Yeah, oh yeah. Like, thankfully I wasn't swept away, but it was like, oh yeah, like he went in and it was what you said, blank over tea kettle. And I remember having to be pulled out. And I remember my grandpa had some choice words for me.
Yeah.
You didn't listen, boy. Like, it was entertaining. But
it was
yeah,
just
that's
funny
where
because like there are just certain things that I think are normal phrases.
But like, yeah, I fell in the river, Justin. Like, legitimately.
That'll do it. Real quick, I want to get to this. Sean
Go
Highkin's
ahead.
going to be coming up in a minute, but I thought we were going to get through maybe a show here heading into college football without talking about Colorado or Coach Prime.
We're
But
so close, Justin.
so close. We almost made it, but we're not going to. And I'm actually going to defend Colorado and Coach Prime here because I don't know if you saw this. Trevor Riley, who was a special teams coordinator, and in his resignation letter, which, by the way, it's not when coaches are throwing you under the bus on the way out of town, that's never good. But in his resignation letter, Trevor Riley claimed that Deion Sanders and others at Colorado sent him to Saudi Arabia to attempt to raise NIL money from the Public Investment Fund. Remember that investment fund that we were absolutely slaughtering all these
genius if it's true.
These golfers for taking. But
Remember we joked.
and then the internet, and again, maybe it's just my internet because it's algorithms, and your internet's different than my internet. The internet started hammering Coach Prime. Blood money, reeks of desperation, blah, blah, blah. This is where I'm going to there is not one college football fan that if the Public Investment Fund came in and said, you know what? We're going to triple your NIL budget. We're going to triple your NIL budget. All you got to do is don't say mean things about the crown.
Can I?
There's not a football fan base, a college football fan base that wouldn't take that money.
Yeah, so
That wouldn't take that money.
As of March 2024, almost $1 trillion in the public investment fund.
And that's, by the way, an estimate.
Right. What's
Nobody
reported.
really knows what's
it's true.
in the
He's
fund.
right.
It's a pretty.
Now,
I don't even know how close of an estimate it is. They're probably over there as they're lighting their cigars with $100 bills, just laughing at that, going like, "A trillion? That's cute."
It's true. But yeah, like I would say this, like Justin, we joked like 6 months ago, if Oregon State became the Oregon State PIF, like I'm just saying, like, I think it, I understand the issues with people and the public. That being said, Justin, is any money really clean without having impacted somebody negatively along the way? Whether it's you're working for...
Well, the Public Investment Fund is pretty well documented.
No, I'm just saying, like, isn't all money...
Some of the bad stuff there.
No, it's true, but isn't all money to an extent, like,
well,
you really
also,
want to source blood money all the way through?
You know what you really don't want to do is look at what the Public Investment Fund is invested in, because it will take you all of about 4 seconds before you find something that you like. It's just the way it is. Like, I love quarter pounders with cheese. I don't want to know how they're made. You know what I mean? I don't want to know how they're made. They always say, like, you know what? But, yeah, it's just like I'm all for taking shots at Coach Prime with his 4-win Louis Vuitton, which is the Louis – I think that's the Louis Vuitton you get, like, on the street in New York or, like, in a big city, like down in L.A., where they're like, Louis Vuitton bags. And it's like, yeah, that's the 4-win Louis. Not the one you wait in a line for and a security guard escorts you into the store. I've seen those. That's not the 4-win Louis Vuitton that Deion Sanders was bringing in. So I'm all for taking a little couple of shots at Deion Sanders. But is there a college football fan alive? If you found out the Public Investment Fund was upping your NIL tens of millions of dollars for a chance to go to the college, no, you'd all take it. You'd all take it.
I did not know they have pretty big holdings in Uber and Blackstone. Those are two pretty important companies in the United States right now.
I'm telling you, dude.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Go and look at it.
That's interesting. But anyway, nevertheless.
But no, I saw this, and
do you think they'll be successful? Do you think Colorado will land it?
No, it sounds like this guy did not happen. I don't think the public investment, because again,
probably like, what's Colorado football?
If you're the Public Investment Fund and they call it sports washing, right? Which is like, hey, we're going to put on all these sporting events, which they've done. I think their two biggest ones are golf and soccer, right? Because they got Ronaldo, and then and golf is international, soccer clearly international. American college football is, while they're going to Dublin tomorrow, American college football is pretty much American.
Sorry,
like they don't do college sports in Europe, right? They do club sports. They don't do American football. I mean, there's NFL, but I don't think they quite have the fandom for college football the way we do. So if you're Saudi Arabia, if you're the Public Investment Fund, if you're not Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, USC, like Colorado,
yeah,
it's cute. I remember Deion Sanders. He did that high stepping thing, right? Yeah. Well, no,
yes.
We don't care if you get a defensive lineman.
Yeah. Sorry if you mentioned this already, Justin, but did you mention that they said they fired him? Like, they literally fired the employee.
I'm saying it was he resigned. And in his resignation letter said, yeah, they sent me to go negotiate with Saudi Arabia.
Like, did you read this quote, though? Like, he said, and I quote, "You paid me $90,000 a year and let me handle special teams," the letter reads. "I did all this work in your name and was told to pursue it." This part's where it gets really interesting, and this is quoted. "I burned through all my contacts in my Mormon community, which is worth about $3 trillion.
Yeah.
Now I can't get these people to answer my calls because I found out today none of my endeavors will happen. I even went to Saudi Arabia and got a meeting with the Saudis." This is bizarre.
It's not if.
Like, he's just like, all right, see you guys, I'm headed off to Saudi Arabia, like in the middle of training camp.
But is it any different than like Texas A&M go like all their oil barons? You know what I mean?
International distance creates kind of a difference. But yeah, I hear you.
I'm just saying, I think everybody would take that money in college football. You know, Oregon's sitting pretty. We got a swoosh. It helps.
American money already in the soil, Joe.
Well, some people might say it's not made in America. Anyways, our good friend Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report, he joins the show next, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, in the last couple of weeks, we have an NBA schedule. I have some big TV news for the Portland Trail Blazers. We've had a minute-and-a-half clip of Shaden Sharp getting buckets at some Pro-Am in Canada, which is fun to watch. I love minute-and-a-half highlights. And we have some anticipation for this Blazer season. Joining us now from the Rose Garden Report, friend of the program, Sean Highkin, back on the big show. Sean, good morning. How we doing?
Doing all right, Justin. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. You tweeted out something a couple of weeks ago that I really connected with because you probably don't know this, but I, like you, I became a cord cutter just like 2 days ago. And you said you don't know how you have lived like this with the YouTube TV. I've had 2 days of the YouTube TV, Sean, and I am exactly in lockstep with you. I don't know how I've lived like this. Unlimited DVR. What is going on?
Yeah, so it's funny. When you're close to it, you kind of hear things, and so I had a pretty good idea in like February or March that, especially after the way I'll put it this way: the way that things went last season with the Blazers as far as their TV situation, where if you recall, a week before the season started, Comcast suddenly moved Root Sports up to just the highest tier of channels that you can get through Comcast or cable, which, obviously that made a whole lot. It didn't affect me because I was already unfortunately paying for whatever the highest price Comcast tier was.
Me too.
But a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine, a lot of people that I saw on Twitter, just a lot of people, and you saw the numbers, their ratings went down like 49% over the course of the season and I think part of it was because the team was rebuilding and they just traded Dame and there wasn't a lot of on-court excitement. But I think a bigger part of it is that literally, even if you wanted to watch the games, you probably couldn't legally. And so I think that was a big part of it. And so because of that, I had a pretty good idea in like February or March that I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, but that something like this might be in the works. And so as soon as the season ended, in April, after they played their last regular season game and I didn't need Root Sports anymore for this last season, I got rid of my cable. I switched to YouTube TV and I started watching the playoffs all day, every day during, in April and May on YouTube TV. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so much better. This is every single way. This is so much better. Like I needed cable for however many years because that was the only way I could watch the Blazers, which I literally need to have to do my job. But, once I had a decent, sense that wasn't going to be the case anymore, I was just like, yeah, let me get out of this. And then I'm me personally, regardless of just, this is great for fans. This is going to be, I think, ultimately good for the team to get some goodwill back with the fan base and make their games more available to more people possible. For me personally, I was thrilled about it.
I'm in the same boat as you as well. It felt weird as I am a Gen Xer. Cable has been part of my life, my entire childhood. Look, I'm a TBS and a WGN kid. But turns out I can still get TBS on the YouTube TV. It was hard. It was a hard decision. But again, like last 2 days, I'm just like, boy, how have I been doing this the whole time? Let's dive into maybe some of the options. And again, we'll write down your answers in pencil, not pen. Best guess, because we still don't have an official announcement. But you're locked in, Sean. You are hearing things at least. What do you think is the most probable thing for Blazer broadcast heading into a season that's going to start in about a month and a half?
It's about 8 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Training camp starts in 5 weeks, and then what is today? The 23rd.
Today is the 23rd. Yes.
So it's exactly 2 months before the season opener against the Warriors on October 23rd. So the thing I think we know for a fact is that they're going to go over the air. Like, you're going to be able to watch Blazer games on local over-the-air network TV. The question is, which channel is it going to be at? Locally, there are 4 options. There's K2, there's Coin/CW, there's KGW, and there's Fox 12. And I think they're still negotiating with a couple of, I don't think all four of those are in it. I would be surprised if KGW was involved at all, because they also are going to show some Kraken games now that the Kraken in Seattle did kind of the same thing and got out of Root Sports. They're going to be their local Portland area TV partner, so there could be some issues with inventory there and having the time slots and some of the same issues that were on Root. So I'd be surprised if KGW was involved. But between Fox and K2 and Coin CW, it's gonna be one of those three that's going to be showing all of the Blazers games locally. And the part that I'm really interested in, I have a pretty good idea that this is something they're pursuing, but I don't know what the details are going to be. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of direct-to-consumer option also, like a Blazers streaming package that you can watch on all the different devices. And I don't know what the exact details of that would look like. I know it's something they're looking at. I don't know, they have this locked in as they're going to be able to roll this out this season, and this is what the details are going to be. I don't know if they're there yet, but a model I think to look at for that would be what the Utah Jazz did this last year with their Jazz Plus streaming service, which if you're in the Salt Lake City area and you want to stream Jazz games, it costs $125 for the season, which I think is a pretty good deal for 82 games. That's like a little more than $1 a game, but $125. Then you also get a pair of Upper Bowl tickets for a game and a T-shirt and a hat as like a bonus for signing up for it. So I think that's the type of thing they are looking at. I don't know what all the details are going to look at, but if they were to do some sort of direct-to-consumer thing, I think that's the model and that's the price point that they would probably be looking at. So I think all that stuff is up in the air right now, but we should be hearing some more stuff about it soon.
Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. Yeah, that was going to be my next question because, going over the air, especially in Portland Metro, is all well and good. But, Sean, I grew up in Southern Oregon. A lot of people ask, why were you a big Blazer fan when you were a kid? I was like, because the games weren't on. And Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls games came on at 5 o'clock on WGN, and I got to watch those. And so that's why I was wondering, and again, I don't know the ins and the outs of this, but do you think maybe in other parts, because the Blazers, the unique thing about it, it is a state of the or a team of the state of Oregon. There are Blazer fans in Southern Oregon and Eastern Oregon that don't get Coin or Fox 12. And if there isn't maybe a streaming option, do you think there's maybe another local TV option in other parts of the state?
Depends on which of these partners they go with. Because let's say they go with K2. That's one of the options. I don't know one way or the other which one they're going to go with. Let's say they go with K2. K2 is owned by Sinclair, which also owns stations in Eugene and Medford. So theoretically, the stations that they own in other parts of the state would also then be broadcasting games over the air in those parts. And Nexstar, which owns Coin, and Gray, which owns Fox, they all own other stations in the state. And so if the Blazers sign a deal with that parent company, then theoretically over everywhere else in the state of Oregon that's also technically in the Blazers broadcast territory, if that parent company also owns stations in other parts of the state, then theoretically they would also be carrying the games. But I think that's something they're still looking at and they're still hammering out. But I do know that the goal of the team in A, getting out of Root Sports after what happened last year, and B, in whatever new deal they sign with a new TV partner, their number one goal is to make the games available to watch for as many people as possible. So this is definitely something they're looking at.
Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. Last thing on the TV part of it, because, kind of what you just said there. I mean, it is not like this has been just a 2-year thing with the Blazers. And I know this because I worked at NBC Sports Northwest. The Bridge was a good show. But, for years, there was the DirecTV didn't have Comcast. Again, my friends down in Southern Oregon who had charter cable didn't get NBC Sports Northwest or Comcast Sports Net before that. There's the whole Blazer Vision thing. Like, this has kind of been an ongoing do-si-do that the Blazers have had. And I feel like, Sean, maybe kind of for the first time in about 2 decades, they kind of got it right, that they're maybe ahead of the curve. Because I do think outside of Boston, New York, LA, I do see this kind of being the way for teams into the future with streaming options plus a local over-the-air option. And it feels like for the first time in a while, Blazers actually kind of got out ahead of the curve on this one.
Well, they're not the first team that's doing this because, like I just mentioned, the Jazz are did a streaming thing this last year, and then the Suns just finished their first season going over the air for their broadcast, and by the way, their rating doubled over their first year that they were doing that, as opposed to being on Bally Sports. And then the New Orleans Pelicans a couple weeks ago also announced that they were getting rid of their Bally Sports station and going over the air in the New Orleans area. And I believe other parts of, to your point earlier about other parts of Louisiana, like I think like there's a Baton Rouge station that's carrying it. There's stations in like other parts of like that part of the country that I think are owned by the same family of networks that are also going to be carrying it. So that's something that they're looking. That's just the way the business is going, though. Like again, outside of like the biggest markets in the country, like you look at what's happened with all the how so many people are cutting cable that these regional sports networks that are making less and less money because the way that those stations make their money is in there's a percentage, like a subscriber fee for like the cable company, where if you pay a certain amount of, and that's why ESPN has made the cuts that they've made too, because the way that ESPN makes a lot of their money is if you pay, let's say $80 a month or whatever for cable, like ESPN has a deal negotiated. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but let's say the number is ESPN has it negotiated that they make $5 a month off of each subscriber, which whether that subscriber actually watches ESPN or not, and like that ESPN is like the highest end of that number. But let's say one of these regional sports networks makes like 50 cents or $1 per subscriber to whatever cable package carries them. If more and more people aren't having cable, these companies are losing money, and so they're not trying to get on more platforms because the subscribers are just not there for that to pencil out for them business wise, and so the teams are kind of getting caught in the crosshairs. I do know, again, going back to what happened this past fall when Comcast moved Root Sports up a tier so that a lot fewer people were able to get access to the channel. That was not a Blazers decision. That was a Comcast/Root Sports decision. The Blazers were totally blindsided by that. And so the teams are kind of looking at it. It's not just the Blazers. It's, a lot of other teams, and especially with, Bally Sports, which owns a lot of the Diamond Sports, which is the parent company that owns like a lot of the networks, not the Blazers, but a lot of the other networks, the regional sports networks that broadcast like about half the teams in the NBA. That company has been in bankruptcy hearings for over a year. And so I think the teams are kind of looking at this, especially with the NBA's national TV deal, which is going through, they're sticking with ESPN as their main partner, but they're also going to NBC, which what are the two things NBC has? An over-the-air network TV channel and the Peacock streaming service that just had a ton of success during the Olympics that a lot of people like. And then they're going to Amazon, which is a purely streaming service, a streaming over-the-top direct-to-consumer platform that doesn't have any kind of TV or cable component to it at all. And so I think teams are looking at it and saying, hey, this is where the business is going. This regional sports network model that has been the model for the last 20 years doesn't really make a lot of sense anymore. How do we kind of future-proof this? And so the two ways to do that are over-the-air network TV, which everybody has if they want it, and streaming, which it seems like more and more people are going towards.
Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. The other news, we got a schedule. We got a schedule release, and here's what I found kind of funny, Sean, is because, and you probably know this for covering the Blazers as much as you have for years. For years, it felt like every year the schedule would come out, and I'm sure other fan bases did this as well, but Blazer fans would then get together, some of them online, some of them just in their group chats, and talk about how the NBA screwed us. No, not enough nationally televised games, not on Christmas. This road trip is horrible. The NBA is absolutely screwing the Blazers. And then this year almost feels like they might have screwed us, but we don't really care. It's just it was kind of a funny juxtaposition heading into a season where even last year, Dame hadn't been traded yet when the schedule came out. Still thought maybe possibly he might come back, and then now that Dame's gone, clearly rebuilding. I didn't feel the amount of the NBA is after us Twitter as I usually do when the schedule gets released.
Well, in this case, if you're a Blazer fan and you want what's best for the franchise long term, you kind of want the NBA to be out to get them.
Exactly.
Like the NBA being out to get them would have been giving them like a really, a cakewalk schedule where they might accidentally win too many games and not put themselves in the position for Cooper Flag next draft lottery. But if you look at this schedule, 27 of their first 29 games are against Western Conference teams. And I guess Utah eventually, I think, is going to join the Blazers in going after lottery odds, but they just extended Lauri Markkanen, so they're going to at least start the season off like trying to win.
Yeah.
And San Antonio is going to be better because they signed Chris Paul, they traded for Harrison Barnes, they have a couple of veterans now around Wemby who's only going to get better. So those are the other two teams in the Western Conference, and even they are going to start the season off like trying to win more than the Blazers are. So 14 out of 15 teams in the West are actively trying to win and get into the play-in or the postseason or whatever the case may be. The Blazers have 27 of their first 29 games of the season against Western Conference teams. So just by default, they're not going to be favored in pretty much any game for the first 2 months of the season just because of who they're playing against. And then they also have a lot of games. I believe it's 16 of their first 18 are part of stretches of 3 games in 4 nights. There's going to be a lot of travel in there and a lot of back-to-backs. And it's the schedule is set up for them to not be favored in a lot of games, not win a lot of games. And if they were trying to make the playoffs, and if they still had Dame and they were trying to be competitive this year, then if you were a fan, you could say, "Oh, the league is out to get us. The league is making it really hard for us to do this." But this is kind of perfect for them because early on when they're at their healthiest and everything is at their freshest, they're going to have the hardest part of their schedule. And then after, at the trade deadline, they'll do whatever they do and make themselves worse, however they need to make themselves worse or, whatever else. But I think the schedule worked out okay for them.
You can follow Sean on Twitter or X at Highkin. There's a GH in there. Also, you need to be subscribed to the Rose Garden Report, rosegardenreport.com, and you can hear from time to time on this particular radio show. Hey, Sean, thanks so much for your time. Fantastic stuff. Have a great weekend. We'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Justin.
There you go, Sean Highkin, Rose Garden Report. I mean, as he was saying that, I had a light bulb moment because, again, I'm a football doofus, okay? I'm focused on football right now. But Brenden, you look at the Western Conference, who's gonna try to be bad? Like other than the Blazers, right? You figure San Antonio's got Wemby. They got their guy. They're not tanking anymore.
They're ready to compete.
They got their guy. Memphis is getting Ja back. I'm going down to the top. Memphis is going to get Ja back. They're going to be better. Utah, as Sean just said, Markkanen just got signed to a pretty decent deal. They're going to want to at least try to win at the beginning. And the Houston Rockets were 4 games away? Or 4 games away. But the Rockets are, I think, 2 years. I don't feel like the Rockets are in tank mode. They're in rebuilding mode, and they're 2 years
They might be
ahead of the
exiting
clock.
rebuilding mode even.
And everybody else made the playoffs.
Remember
last
the
year.
Rockets wanted to trade for Kevin Durant. Remember that's how they thought they were ready to compete.
Exactly. So
I agree with you. The Blazers will probably be the worst team in the West.
There's no other team in the West that is trying to capture the flag.
You could see a star go down with an injury.
Clippers.
That happens every year.
It's going to be the Clippers. Maybe the Clippers. Like
They only have one star left.
Paul George is gone. James Harden's going to get disgruntled.
Kawhi's like, yeah, I'm out.
And Kawhi's going to get hurt. It's going to be the Clippers. But, A, they're the Clippers with Steve Ballmer. B, they got a new arena they're opening up. They're not going to tank in the first year of a new arena.
I would watch out for one injury team that might just punt on the season, but no, he's absolutely right. Blazers will struggle heavily this year.
And they might even be trying their best.
Capture the flag, baby.
All right, let's get to the break. When we come back, RCM mailbag, and we wrap up the big show. Get ready to attack the weekend next, 620 Rip City Radio. God, this song hits. It just does.
Makes you want to get back to the theater and see the scene again.
No,
doesn't
it makes me want to get into a jacked up F-150 and put on my cowboy hat and
that
feel
too.
it and chase it, baby.
That
That's what I want to do. I want to get out there and start chasing some storms.
A different
Glenn
world.
Powell is the coolest guy ever. Is he like, okay. Reverse mailbag.
Let's do it. Should we open it first?
Yeah, open up the
All right, let's do
mailbag. Even though I want to hear a little, I wanted to hear a little more Luke Combs, but that's all right. We got to get to the mailbag. I would have said a month ago that number one draft pick for dudes, like just men on the planet Earth. I would say Ryan Reynolds probably would have been a number one draft pick. He had that whole Deadpool thing coming out, so comic book nerds like you like him.
Still haven't seen it. I need to get that.
Like the whole Wrexham thing.
Yeah.
And he's good looking,
Yep.
but charming, but like sounds like this whole movie producer thing. He took a couple of hits from with the way that I think Blake Lively and him were like kind of pushed a guy out for the It Ends With Us, that movie.
Yeah.
Is Glenn Powell like number one on the dude power rankings right now?
When you
Yeah,
talk,
and I'm a couple of secure dudes talking about other dudes, and I don't care. But I would have said Ryan Reynolds, probably number one in the power rankings right now, heading into the season. Has Glenn Powell leapfrogged Ryan Reynolds in dude power rankings?
he's getting close. I don't know if I'd go leapfrog, but like it's interesting because most of the main male actors that we consider the quote unquote leads of the industry are into their 50s, early 60s now. Like Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh, yeah. New generation's coming up.
Right. And that's why I said of the new generation, he's probably like, I don't know, like, yeah, like as far as popular, like his, like, yeah, it's like that point. Like right now, his star is bright. He's absolutely hit on it. And I'm curious to see what other movies he comes
Well,
up
because
with.
there's the like.
Have you seen Hitman on Netflix? Still haven't seen that one.
Yes.
Oh, is it good?
I've seen. Dude, all right. In my house,
Okay.
let me just say.
He's popular in your house. I get
He's
you.
very
I get you.
popular in my house. If there is a Glenn Powell movie, it is going to be played in my house. All right.
Worthwhile.
Let's just say I would be replaced so fast by Glenn Powell.
Hey, you know, everyone's got a celebrity crush, man.
My wife is a big fan. Like we
Fair.
sat there and we watched Twisters, and I was all pumped because the Luke Combs song is on, and then I look over at my wife and she's just smiling, and I'm like, you Glenn Powell. I can't hate you though. I can't hate you, Glenn Powell.
Yeah. Interesting.
She is a fan.
Interestingly enough, Justin, one thing I'd recommend to you because I know it would be way up your alley. Have you ever watched the gym and fridge videos on YouTube where they go to celebrities and they have them break down what's in their fridge and what's their workout?
Okay.
Look
Here
up
we-
Glenn Powell's. I watched it the other day. It's awesome. Talks about like how he's a big time native Texan, obviously, but he's like a lot of things in Texas you can't eat, not good for you. Super big fitness guy too, obviously.
Well, he is. He's jacked.
You would know, right?
You can't go chase tornadoes and not be in good shape. All right.
And yeah, like I watched, it's probably like 7-8 minutes. Highly recommend. I'm like, okay, like he's not like doing anything ridiculously crazy, and he looks really good. Like
I think he's like in the college football sense. I think he might be like Oregon, right, where everybody's
Yeah.
like poised to have a big season, but need to see it. Like you can do your summer blockbuster, but can you do a comic? Like he's got to have a comic book movie coming up. I'm sure. I know he's doing the. Do you remember that skit that Eli Manning did? Chad Powers, where he went to Penn State as a walk-on and pretended to be Chad Powers. Well, I guess Glenn Powell is playing Chad Powers in a movie adaptation of the skit that Eli Manning started. So he's going to be in a football movie next.
okay, that's interesting because I did hear, Justin, this is interesting. Probably not the leading guy. His name is blanking on me right now. But I heard rumors he was on the short list to be the next Bond, too. So because they're getting ready for the next round of James Bond movies and all that. And, it's a pretty big deal if you're asked to be Mr. Bond. So I don't know if I see him for that, though.
He's from Texas.
Yeah?
Texas guy can't play Bond. I'm just going to say it. Bond,
I don't disagree.
Bond has to have an accent.
I think so.
Not a Texas accent. You know what I mean? Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig, clearly Sean Connery.
Yes, the
like
best.
those guys are Bond. Bond has to be European. He does. He has to be European.
What if you could rock
Have we
an
had an American Bond?
What if you could rock an accent?
Even still,
You wouldn't do it? You wouldn't be out on an American Bond?
I'm out on American Bond. I think Bond's got to be British.
Yeah, I mean, and you're
It's one
probably
of those things. And call me old-fashioned.
no, and you're probably
Bond's got to be at least European.
yeah, and you're probably right. But yeah, no, he was one of like 5 names I saw out there. I'm like, ooh, yeah. So his star is certainly bright. Let's go ahead and continue this in the mailbag, Justin, because now I'm curious. Sean Connery's best Bond, right?
Yeah, Sean
It's
Connery.
not even-
He's the first Bond,
Yeah,
and the first
yeah.
one is the best Bond. And Sean Connery is the best Bond. Number 2 is Daniel Craig, and Pierce Brosnan was a good Bond. Pierce Brosnan was a good James Bond. But there is a gap between Sean Connery, Daniel Craig, big gap. Pierce Brosnan.
Where are you on Timothy Dalton?
Timothy Dalton's fine.
Okay.
He's fine. And then there is wait, don't
I
I
just want
can't-
to make sure.
I can't think of it.
Roger Moore.
Roger Moore.
And then
He's like the Ringo Starr of the Bonds. Like, sorry, you're always going to be in last place.
yeah, so there's been David Niven was the first one. George Lazenby.
Oh, Lazenby's the one who's like Ringo.
Okay. Yeah.
That one I was wrong.
Roger, Timothy, Pierce, Craig.
Boom.
So I mean
Connery's the best.
yeah,
Connery's the best Bond. He is James Bond, and then it's just like Michael Keaton's Batman. He just is. I know that you all
Christian
love
Bale's my guy.
Christian Bale.
Yeah, he's my guy.
And I get it, but I'm sorry, Michael Keaton's Batman.
Hey, you will at
He
least
is.
agree Heath Ledger's Joker. No question, right?
No. Jack Nicholson's Joker.
Wow. Okay.
Jack Nicholson's
Okay.
Joker.
See, there's the gap between the two of us, Justin.
And if there was ever a bit of evidence to explain that I shall be 45 in 2 weeks, it is what I just said right there, which
Man,
is
I ride for Heath, man.
Jack Nicholson's Joker. He is.
Jack Nicholson, legendary performance. I respect it.
Trying to think of like other Batman hot takes, but we only have 15 seconds. So instead of giving out some hot takes, let's give out some thank yous. Thank you to Sean Highkin from the Rose Garden Report. Appreciate him hanging out with us earlier today. Thanks to super producer Brenden. And most importantly, thanks to all of you for hanging out with us, not only today, but all week long. Oh, it is game day next week, or excuse me, game week next week. We'll talk to you Monday morning bright and early here on 620 Rip City Radio.